Okay, so in yesterday's reading session, we had looked about consistency and what is the state of mind, and how the author actually asks the user to change their mindset to accept risk. Every trade, there is a risk involved, and the author is telling that the winning people, they they don't get bogged down when they lose money. They basically accept the risk, and for that they actually continue trading as if nothing happened. And every time when we take a trade, author is telling that if we don't accept the risk, we will end up getting scared, and then we end up doing the same mistakes which we actually fear about. And the author also says that those who break that cycle of avoiding the risk actually uh, they end up doing that only after burning a lot of money. And the author also thinks about tells us about how you have to align your mental environment, like, and every time when you make a trade, it's like a software code, and there are lots of lines and lines of code, but there will be somewhere at one particular place where there will be a bug, and all you need to do is fix that bug. And if we don't fix that bug, entire system crashes. So the same way, our mental environment is also like, layers of mental environment is there, but somewhere our perspective or mindset, we have a bug and it needs to be fixed. But the author says that unless you know that there is a bug inside our mental environment, and unless we acknowledge that, we won't be able to fix it. And to understand that we have a bug, we need some expertise. And author first says that once you understand that you have a problem, acknowledge it, and you need to fix it. And just because we are aware does not mean that we believe it, right? So, and for that, the author says about his friends uh, uh, tryst with who is afraid of snakes, and how although the friend knows that not all snakes are poisonous, also he is aware that not all snakes are poisonous. He still jumps when he encounters a snake. So these are all the contradictory beliefs. So just like that, we may tell that we are not risk uh, takers, but the minute we face a loss, how we handle that? Are we really cool with that, or are we, you know, accept that, or are we going to jump just like how the friend saw the snake? So this is what the entire thing. It's about consistency. The previous chapter we saw about uh, what is it called, taking responsibility, and today we'll see the fifth chapter, dynamics of perception. One of the primary objectives of this book is to teach you how to take the threat of pain out of market information. The market doesn't generate happy or painful information. From the market's perspective, it is all simply information. It may seem as if the market is causing you to feel the way you do at any given moment, but that's not the case. It's your own mental framework that determines how you perceive the information, how you feel, and as a result, whether or not you are in the most conducive state of mind to spontaneously enter the flow and take advantage of whatever the market is offering. Professionals do not perceive anything about the markets as painful. Therefore, no threat exists for them. If there is no threat, there is nothing to defend against. As a result, there is not any reason for their conscious or subconscious defense mechanisms to kick in. That's why professionals can see and do things that mystify everyone else. They are in the flow because they are perceiving an endless stream of opportunities. And when they are not in the flow, the very best of the best can recognize the fact and then compensate by either scaling back or not trading at all. So in these two paragraphs, the author says about how you perceive the information. Okay, so market will give a lot of things. It goes on ups and downs, but are we getting sad or happy after seeing the information? So that is what the author is telling. And it's not that market is causing us the happiness or pain. It's we perceive it, right? So if we take a trade and it goes up in our direction, then we feel happy. If we take a trade and it does not go in that direction, we feel sad. So the author says that the professionals don't, they don't consider if it goes in our direction or if it goes against our direction as pain or happiness. They simply, trade. That's it. So, and they keep doing it, and we all think, everybody thinks that that is something mysterious. So they know that they are in the flow, and at that time they do the trade, and if that market gives them some benefits, they'll take it. If not, they'll not take it. But the main important thing is they know that they are in the flow, and if they are not in the flow, okay, what they do is they reduce their position. Okay, like you're trading some and red quantities, they immediately scale back, or they don't trade at all. That is the important thing. So this is what the author says about how, in these two paragraphs, how you restrain yourself, how professionals restrain themselves. If your goal is to be able to trade like the professionals, you must be able to see the market from an objective perspective without distortion. You must be able to act without resistance or hesitation, but with the appropriate amount of positive restraint to counteract the negative effects of overconfidence or euphoria. In essence, your objective is to be able to create a unique state of mind, a trader's mentality. When you have accomplished this, everything else about your success as a trader will fall into place. To help you achieve that objective, I am going to give you a way to redefine your relationship to market information so that there will be little or no potential to perceive any of it as threatening. By redefine, I mean to change your perspective and operate out of a mental framework that keeps you focused on the opportunities available instead of tapping you into emotional pain. So the author says that, you have to, if you want to become a pro, if you want to become a professional, you should be able to take a trade without any resistance or hesitation. At the same time, you should also have some amount of restraint. Okay, because if you keep taking without any resistance or hesitation always, what is that? That is basically recklessness. So you become overconfident or euphoria and you make mistakes. And then you go to the state where you will be scared. That is what author is telling. So you need to have, that is the trader's mentality. And when we achieve this, okay, whatever we think as success will start falling into place. And to go into this trader's mentality, right? The author is telling that he is not going to do anything with the market, but he will basically ask us to redefine our relationship with the information. Okay, so market has some information. He is asking us to, but he will be basically redefining our relationship. And by redefining, what he means is that he's going to change our perspective. So that is the dynamics of perception. So when that redefining is happening, we will look at market as stream of opportunities and not as an emotional pain. Debugging your mental software. In other words, we want to get the bugs out of our mental software code and get our minds right. Doing this effectively will require an understanding of the nature of mental energy and how you can use that energy to change a perspective that is generating an unwanted negative emotional response to market information. There is much to learn, but I think you will be amazed at how simple changes can make a huge difference in your trading results. The process of trading starts with perceiving an opportunity. Without the perception of an opportunity, we would not have a reason to trade. So, I think it is only fitting that we start our examination of mental energy by breaking down the process of perception. What are the underlying dynamics of perception? What factors determine how we perceive information, or what we perceive in relationship to what is available? How is perception connected with what we experience at any given moment? Probably the easiest way to understand the dynamics of perception and answer these questions is to think of everything, and I do mean everything, that exists in, on, and around this planet as a collection of forces. Okay, forces that generate information about the properties, characteristics, and traits that make them uniquely what they are. Everything that exists outside of our bodies, all plants and all categories of life, all planetary phenomena in the form of weather conditions, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions, all active and inert physical matter, and all non-corporeal phenomena such as light, sound waves, microwaves, and radiation generates information about the nature of its existence. That information has the potential to act as a force on one of our 5 physical senses. Before we go any further, okay, fine. So here the author is trying to debug our mental software, which he said earlier, where you might be having some bugs in between and how you are going to fix it. And instead of looking at trading as simply trading, he wants us to look at as trading as an opportunity, right? And what is an opportunity? You basically perceive, right? And then he goes to explain what is perception. Perception is basically what we feel, what we understand. And to quickly understand that, the author says that you think of everything that is there in the planet as some amount of force. Okay, a force which generates information. So everything what we see, what we hear are all energy or force which is giving some information. It has some properties, it has some characteristics, has some traits. That is what makes it unique. So everything which is there, volcanic eruptions, plants, and all these things are all active and inert physical matter, and everything, my lives, and they're all generating information about the nature of its existence. That information has the potential to act as a force on one of our 5 physical senses. Okay, so he's trying to explain about what is perception. Before we go any further, notice that I use the verb generate in an all-inclusive way, implying that everything is in an active state of expression, including inanimate objects. Okay, so he's telling that all the forces, collection of forces, are actually generating the information. Okay, and he's not only telling that it's moving or something which is not moving, something which is a stone, that is also generating an information. Okay, so to illustrate why I do that, let us look at something as simple as rock. It is an inanimate object composed of unique atoms and molecules expressing themselves as a rock. I can use the active verb expressing because the atoms and molecules that make up the rock are in constant motion. So even though the rock does not appear active, except in the most abstract sense, it has characteristics and properties that will act as forces on our senses, causing us to experience and make distinctions about the nature of its existence. For example, a rock has texture, and that texture acts as a force on our sense of touch if we run our fingers across the rock's surface. A rock has shape and color, which acts as a force on our vision. The rock takes up space so that no other object can occupy, so that we see it instead of an empty space or some other object. A rock can also have an odor that acts as a force on our sense of smell or taste like something, although I have not licked any rocks lately to find out. So here how, the author says that it could be simply a rock, but it is actually having an impact in our five senses, right? So if we see it and we see that it is not empty, that space that's occupied with rock, we feel it if we touch it, we you know and if there's a color also you can see there, and if there's an odor which we can smell it, and if we want to taste, we can taste it also, although the author has not tasted. When we encounter anything in the environment that expresses its properties and characteristics, an exchange of energy takes place. Energy from the outside, in the form of whatever is expressing itself, gets transformed by our nervous system into electrical impulses and then gets stored in our inner mental environment. To be more specific, whatever we are seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, or feeling through our senses gets transformed into electrical impulses of energy and stored in our mental environment as a memory and or distinction about the nature of the way things exist. So whatever we see, hear, we smell, and all these things, we actually get electrical impulses in our nervous system. Basically, there is something. It gets stored in our memory as memory. Okay, mental environment as memory. So this is what he says as the mental environment from the previous chapter. So whatever you perceive, those are all getting imprinted in your brain as memory. I think all of this is fairly self-evident to most people, but there are some profound implications here that are not self-evident, and we typically take them completely for granted. First of all, there is a cause and effect relationship that exists between ourselves and everything else that exists in the external environment. As a result, our encounters with external forces create what I am going to call energy structures inside our minds. The memories, distinctions, and ultimately the beliefs we acquire throughout our lives exist in our mental environment in the form of structured energy. Structured energy is an abstract concept. You might be asking yourself, how does energy take shape or form? Before I answer this question, an even more fundamental question needs to be addressed. How do we know that memories, distinctions, and beliefs exist in the form of energy in the first place? I don't know if it's been scientifically proven or completely accepted by the scientific community, but ask yourself, in what other form could these mental components exist? Here's what we know for sure. Anything composed of atoms and molecules take up space and therefore can be observed. If memories, distinctions, and beliefs existed in some physical form, then we should be able to observe them. To my knowledge, no such observations have been made. The scientific community has dissected brain tissue, both living and dead, examined it at the level of the individual atom, mapped various regions of the brain in terms of their functions, but nobody as yet has observed a memory, distinction, or belief in its natural form. By in its natural form, I mean that although a scientist can observe the individual brain cells that contain certain memories, he cannot experience those memories firsthand. He can only experience them if the person to whom the memories belong is alive and chooses to express them in some way. So far the author is telling about all the things he said about all the rock and all these things we could perceive and all these things. And he says that, this is not something new, you all might be knowing. And it's not some rocket science. We all know that this is like, what is a new thing here. But he says that there is something which this has some profound implications which are not self-evident. And we take them for granted. That is what the author is trying to tell. First of all, there is a cause and effect, okay, between ourselves and everything else that exists in the environment. See, cause means there is a rock which is causing, and there is an effect. Basically, we are feeling, right? So if the rock is there, we are able to see. So that is a cause and the effect. The rock, if we are smelling the rock is producing this smell and we are sensing it. So that is the effect. So that is what the author is telling. There's a cause and effect relationship. Okay. And he says that, all these encounters with the external forces are, he's going to call it as energy structure. Okay. And now he's asking, what is, if it's a structure, it should have a shape, right? All this memory, all these things, which he says should have a shape. And how do we know that those are actually they exist in the form of energy, right? So, and the author says that the scientific community uh, uh, does not so far, they have dissected everything, they have dissected each and every part of the brain, but nothing, they could not they could not basically physically tell memory. Okay. So they can only tell if the person is alive and he says it from that memory, expresses it from the memory. So if memories, distinctions, and beliefs do not exist as physical matter, then there really isn't any alternative way for them to exist except as some form of energy. If this is in fact the case, can this energy take on a specific shape? Can it be structured in a way that reflects the external forces that caused it to come into existence? Most definitely. Is there anything in the environment that is analogous to energy having shape or a specific structure? Yes. So if there is no physical representation of those memories, author is now asking, then could it be some uh, in the form of an energy? Okay. And if it is some energy, right, can it be given some shape? And if it is some energy, can we take it, structure it, modify it in a way? Can it be structured by external entities, right? So that is what the author is trying to tell. So author is telling that you have a memory, you cannot physically, uh, you know, prove its existence, but you know that you have that memory. If it is not in physical existence, then it could be some energy, right? And if it is an energy, can it be taken any shape? Or alternatively, if it is an energy, can it be structured by external environments? And that is what author is going to tell. Most definitely, thoughts are energy because you think in a language, your thoughts are structured by the limitations. I'll highlight this, very profound. Because you think in a language, your thoughts are structured by the limitations and rules that govern the particular language in which you think. When you express those thoughts aloud, you create sound waves, which are a form of energy. The sound waves created by the interaction of your vocal cords and tongue are structured by the content of your message. Microwaves are energy. Many phone calls are relayed by microwaves, which means that the microwave energy has to be structured in a way that reflects the message it is carrying. Laser light is energy, and if you have ever witnessed a demonstration of a laser light show or laser art, what you have seen is pure energy taking a shape that reflects the creative desires of the artists. So whatever we think we want to tell, but we cannot tell whatever comes to our mind. We have rules called grammar in a language. Even the grammar, leave the grammar, there are sounds, there are phonetics, so many rules are there. If you don't follow those things, you will not be conveying the information. So you are guided by the environment. There is a rules which basically convert your thought to energy, and that is how you transfer the information to another person. Similarly, you have microwaves. When you do a phone call, whatever we are doing, for example, via Zoom, and all my audio is actually transmitted. It has to be transmitted in a proper format. That is how you could hear. Else it will not reflect whatever I'm telling. Similarly, we have laser light show, same thing. Okay. So the author is trying to tell that these are all energies and they are structured. They can be structured by whom? By the external environment. So all of these are good examples of how energy can take shape, form, and structure. Of course, there are many more, but there is one more example that illustrates the point in the most graphic way. At the most fundamental level, what are dreams? I'm not asking you what dreams mean or what you think their purpose is, but rather, what are they? What are their properties? If we assume that dreams take place within the confines of our skulls, then they cannot be composed of atoms and molecules because there wouldn't be enough space for all of the things that exist and take place in our dreams. Dream experiences seem to have the same proportions and dimensions as the things we perceive when we are awake and experiencing life through our five senses. The only way this could be possible is if dreams were a form of structured energy, because energy can take on any size or dimension, but in doing so does not actually take up any space. So now the author is finally connecting with our dreams, right? So he says that if you cannot, you can only feel dreams. You cannot, you know, show it to anybody else. Only you can know what your dream is. You can tell it in the form of voice, but still it is inside. So, and if they are, if they are physical, then obviously whatever you see, whatever weird things we dream, whatever weird places we see in dream, those must be physical, and those must be physical means those must have atoms and molecules. Obviously all these things cannot be inside our head, right? So he says that finally that it is possible, then dreams must be energy. And why he says that it is energy, because energy can take any size or dimension, but at the same time it does not take any space. It's like, kind of little bit oxymoron. It's like it can take any size or dimension, but it does not take space. So that's the beauty. I mean, you can dream whatever you want. You can dream the entire world, you can dream the entire universe, but it will not take up that space, right? So so that is what energy is also like that. That is what he's telling. Now, it if it has not already occurred to you, there is something here that is really profound. If the memories, distinctions, and beliefs we have acquired as a result of our encounters with the external environment represent what we have learned about that environment and how it works, and if these memories, distinctions, and beliefs exist in our mental environment as energy, and if energy does not take up any space, then it also could be said that we have an unlimited capacity for learning. Well, not only do I think it could be said, I am saying it. Okay. So now the author is trying to tell, if all these beliefs and memories which we have acquired from our childhood, they are all, you know, created by external environment, and it can be changed. That's what he's trying to tell. And because the same external environment, you can modify that energy, because energy can take, because whatever he's telling, that whatever you have in your memory is actually energy, and how energy can take up any space or any size or any dimension, it can be modified, its change can be modified, its structure can be modified. You can also do it. That is what author is telling. And how can you do it? By unlimited capacity for learning. And so if energy does not take up any space, and then it calls me said that we have an unlimited capacity of learning, right? So consider, this is basically coming from that particular oxymoron thing. It can be changed and all these things. So the same way how we have our memories, or how beliefs, how this is how right or wrong and all these things, it can be modified also. Okay. Consider the development of human consciousness and what we have learned collectively, as well as what the typical individual needs to know to function effectively compared to just 100 years ago. Okay. There is absolutely nothing to indicate that we don't have an unlimited capacity to learn. The difference between what we are aware of now and what we can do as a result of this expanded awareness would boggle the mind of anyone living 100 years ago. Okay. So he now compares us with 100 years before. If someone 100 years ago, if they see it, they will be, they will get boggled. I mean, I myself am boggled by, things like Chat GPT and all. Obviously, they will be boggled, right? So that is what. But the point is that learning, that memory has now changed, right? So that is what. So you can change. 100 years before we were something, now we are something. Perception and learning. However, we must be careful not to equate storage capacity with learning capacity. Learning and becoming aware of what is available to be learned is not just a function of storage capacity. If it were, then what would stop us from knowing everything? And if we knew everything, then what would stop us from perceiving every possible characteristic, property, or trait of everything that is expressing itself in any given moment? What stops us now? These questions get to the very heart of why you have to understand that mental components like memories, distinctions, and beliefs exist as energy. Anything that is energy has the potential to act as a force expressing its form, and that is exactly what our memories, distinctions, and beliefs do. They act as a force on our senses from the inside, expressing their form and content, and in the process of doing so, they have a profoundly limiting effect on the information we perceive in any given moment, making much of the information that is available from the environment's perspective and the possibilities inherent within that information literally invisible. Oh my god, this is a little bit taking a different dimension, and we'll read it again. However, here the author is trying to compare about storage capacity and the learning capacity. So storage means whatever, how much we can remember. So that is the storage capacity. Learning capacity is at the end again, you can keep on learning, but you can only remember certain amount of memory, right? And it kind of differs from person to person. So that is what here it is telling. So learning is how you basically shape your memory again and again. So something you might remember today, somebody's face you might remember, you might have remembered 10 years ago, but now if you see them, you won't remember, right? So that is what. So what you remember is actually the storage capacity and how much. And not everybody has the same storage capacity. Some people will remember everything. They are like, they are they remember a lot of things. They cannot forget also. So, but some people are not like that. So the author is trying to tell the difference between that and this. Okay, and these questions to get to the very heart of why you have to understand that mental components like memories, distinctions, and beliefs exist as energy. So these are all the questions which you have to, which basically makes us understand there are things like memories, there are things like beliefs, there are things like distinctions. So anything that has the energy has the potential to act as a force expressing its form, and that is exactly what our memories, distinctions, beliefs do. So you can read something, you can listen to something. All these are at the end what, they're all forces. Just like how the rock is a force, you can see something that will also force. So they are only how they are being stored as, they are stored as memories, our beliefs, and our distinctions. And these again not only are they simply sitting, they are also acting as forces from inside, right? So whatever we believe, whatever we have as memory, whatever we have in our mind, whatever we read, whatever we absorb, they are acting as forces from inside, and they are expressing their form and content. And they have, as a result, what is happening, it could have a limiting information also, right? It will prevent you from absorbing new information if it is so strong, if you're so rigid, if you don't want to take new information, right? uh, you will not be open. Okay, so that is what the author is telling here. And so much information is available, but we are not taking it inside. Why? Because we already have some information in our brain which is preventing us from absorbing, right? This is looks very profound, this looks more philosophical. That's why some people are, you know uh, have their own set of beliefs. We have all the whole concept of wings. We have the left wing, right wing, center wing, left, right, center, right. All these things are, we can correlate. Some are left, some are right, some are center. Some will agree with certain things, some will not agree with certain things. Some will tell this is good, some will tell this is bad. Some will. So these kind of things, you see, all are fighting because of the internal memories and beliefs which we have. Now, and we don't want to go philosophical there, we don't want to go into there, but he's bringing that particular aspect to the trading environment, right? Especially when you, what psychology you have, what you have about what you think about money. I am saying here that in any given moment, the environment is generating an enormous amount of information about its properties, characteristics, and traits. Some of that information is beyond the physical range of our senses. For example, our eyes can't see every wavelength of light, nor can our ears hear every frequency of sound the environment produces. Okay. So there is definitely a range of information that is beyond the physiological capabilities of our senses. So the author is here, just like how we have 20 to 20,000 hertz of frequency only, which our which our ears can hear. And obviously there are certain things which we cannot see. So that is the physiological limitation. But what about the rest of the information the environment is generating about itself? Do we see, hear, taste, smell, or feel through our senses? Every possible distinction, trait, and characteristic being expressed by everything that is within the physiological range of our senses? Absolutely not. The energy that is inside of us will categorically limit and block our awareness of much of this information by working through the same sensory mechanisms the external environment works through. So even though we have 20 to 20,000 hertz of audio range, even though we can see so many things in this particular spectrum of light, we don't absorb everything. So for example, you might have walked. Will you remember what the person whom you crossed, what color of dress he's wearing, he or she is wearing? No, our brain is blocking those things. So this is what the author is trying to tell. Now, if you take a moment and think about it, some of what I just said should be self-evident. For example, there are many ways in which the external environment can express itself that we don't perceive simply because we have not learned about them yet. This is easy to illustrate. Think back for the first time you ever looked at a price chart. What did you see? Exactly what did you perceive? With no previous exposure, I am sure, like everyone else, you saw a bunch of lines that had no meaning. Now, if you are like most traders, when you look at a price chart, you see characteristics, traits, and behavior patterns that represent the collective actions of all the traders who participated in those particular trades. Initially, the chart represented undifferentiated information. Undifferentiated information usually creates a state of confusion. And that's probably what you experienced when you first encountered a chart. Gradually, however, you learn to make distinctions about that information, such as trends and trend lines, consolidations, support and resistance, retracements, or significant relationships between volume and open interest and price action, just to name a few. You learned that each of these distinctions in the market's behavior represented an opportunity to fulfill some personal need, goal, or desire. Each distinction now had a meaning and some relative degree of significance or importance attached to it. Now, I want you to use your imagination and pretend that I just said before you the very first price chart you ever saw. Would there be a difference between what you see now and what you saw then? Absolutely. Instead of a bunch of undifferentiated lines, you would see everything you have learned about those lines between then and now. In other words, you would see all the distinctions you have learned to make, as well as all the opportunities those distinctions represent. Yet, everything you can see as you look at that chart now existed then, and furthermore was available to be perceived. What is the difference? The structured energy that is inside of you now, the knowledge you have gained, acts as a force on your eyes, causing you to recognize the various distinctions that you have learned about. Since that energy was not there the first time you looked at the chart, all the opportunities that you now see were there, but at the same time invisible to you. Furthermore, unless you have learned to make every possible distinction based on every possible relationship between the variables in that chart, what you have not learned yet is still invisible. Fantastic. So the author is now, you remember earlier he said about how our beliefs, how our things, what we have as memory, it is actually not only it is there inside as a memory, it itself is having its own force in our brain. So as a result, we will either understand or not understand. We'll block some information, we'll not block, right? So now he's connecting that with the trading. So when we first saw these candlestick patterns, all we saw was just some lines. We could not make sense because nothing was there in our memory. Nothing was there in our brain. We have not read anything. But now if we see, we don't see it as bars. We see it as chart patterns. We see how there is a fight between supply and demand. We see how the bulls and bears are fighting. We again, not only that, we also connect it with all the things. We see the support, we see the resistance, we see the consolidation, and then we see the retracement, and then we see what is the price action, we see what is the open interest. All these things we connect. Now, if you ask how is there a difference between how you perceive now and not? Yes, there is absolutely a different of perception. That is what this chapter is about, what you perceive, right? So there is something inside you. What is that? That is a memory. That is the structured energy. That is the belief. You have learned so many things. You might have learned about price action. You might have learned about candlestick. You might have learned about everything. And those are now acting inside, right? So the first time when we saw the chart, they were not there. Okay. Now it is there. That is what he's telling. And if you still cannot identify that, we still have not learned. That is what author is telling. Most of us have no concept of the extent to which we are continually surrounded by invisible opportunities inherent in the information we are exposed to. More often than not, we never learn about these opportunities, and as a result, they remain invisible. The problem, of course, is that unless we are in a completely new or unique situation, or we are operating out of an attitude of genuine openness, we won't perceive something that we have not learned about yet. To learn about something, we have to be able to experience it in some way. So what we have here is a closed loop that prevents us from learning. Perceptual closed loops exist in all of us because they are natural functions of the way mental energy expresses itself on our senses. Okay. So what he's telling here is we have, because of the things which we have in our brain, because of the things which we have in our mind, we have generated some closed loop. So as a result, what is happening? We are not accepting some information inside. So everyone has heard the expression, people see what they want to see. I would put it in little differently. People see what they have learned to see, and everything else is invisible until they learn how to counteract the energy that blocks their awareness of whatever is unlearned and waiting to be discovered. This is a fantastic, very profound line. So people see what they want to see. That is one thing. But the author is telling in a way, people see what they have learned. Okay. And everything else is invisible. Everything else is blind. So till they counteract that thing which is there inside their mind, that thing which they have learned in their mind, that is acting, that mental memory which they have in their mind, that is giving some force. You need to counteract that because that is only blocking you from being aware. That is only blocking you from seeing. And unless you counteract that and you want what is to be discovered, you will not be able to see. That is what author is telling. To illustrate this concept and make it even clearer, I am going to give you another example, one that demonstrates how mental energy can affect how we perceive and experience the environment in a way that it actually reverses the cause and effect relationship. Let's look at a very young child's first encounter with a dog. Because it's a first time experience, the child's mental environment is a clean state, so to speak, with respect to dogs. He won't have any memories and certainly no distinctions about a dog's nature. Therefore, up to the moment of his first encounter, from the child's perspective, dogs do not exist. Of course, from the environment's perspective, dogs do exist and they have the potential to act as a force on the child's senses to create an experience. In other words, dogs expressing their nature can act as a cause to produce an effect inside the child's mental environment. What kind of effect are dogs capable of producing? Well, dogs have a range of expression. By range of expression, I mean dogs can behave in a number of ways towards humans. They can be friendly, loving, protective, and fun to play with, or they can be hostile, mean, and dangerous, just to name a few of the many behaviors they are capable of. All of these traits can be observed, experienced, and learned about. When the child sees the dog for the first time, there is absolutely nothing in his mental environment to tell him what he's dealing with. Unfamiliar, unknown, and unclassified environmental information can generate a sense of curiosity when we want to find out more about what we are experiencing. Or it can generate a state of confusion which can easily turn to fear if we cannot place the information into an understandable or meaningful organizational framework or context. In our example, the child's sense of curiosity kicks in and he rushes to the dog to get more sensory experience. Notice how children are literally compelled to thrust themselves into a situation they know nothing about. However, in this example, the environmental forces at hand do not react favorably to the child's advances. The dog the child is interested in is either inherently mean or having a bad day. In any case, as soon as the child gets close enough, the dog bites him. The attack is so severe that the dog has to be pulled off the child. This kind of unfortunate experience is certainly not typical, but it is not that uncommon either. I chose it for two reasons. First, most people can relate it to in some way, either from their own direct experience or through the experience of someone they know. Second, as we analyze the underlying dynamics of this experience from an energy perspective, we are going to learn about how our minds are designed to think, process information, how these processes affect what we experience, and our ability to recognize new possibilities. I know this may seem like a lot of insight from just one example, but the principles involved apply to the dynamics beneath virtually all learning. So in this, the author said that, whatever you don't see what you want to see, you basically see what you learn to see, and everything else is invisible because whatever you have learned, that is blocking you from seeing, right? And unless you break that particular memory, it's impossible for you to discover new things. And for that, the author gives an example of how a child is encounters with a dog and how children are very curious by themselves. And but because at the first time when they see the dog is giving energy in the form of physical, visual uh, appearance, and the children is curious. The child goes to the dog. Now the dog could either behave very good, or it could behave in a mean way, either, and it could be in a mean way because it is by default the dog is a mean dog, or if it is having a bad day, then also it could behave in a mean way, and the dog might bite the child. And he's telling that some of us might have experienced, some of us might have seen people who have experienced this. And but irrespective of that, he's analyzing, he's telling us how we learn, and like how our minds are designed to think, and how we process the information, and how these process whatever information we have taken in affect our experience, and how we recognize new possibilities. So it might seem a lot of things, but he's going to tell they're all learning. As a result of being physically and emotionally traumatized, the little boy in our example now has a memory and one distinction about the way dogs can express themselves. If the boy's ability to remember his experiences is normal, he can store his incident in a way that represents all of the senses the experience had an impact on. For example, the attack can be stored as mental images based on what he saw, as well as mental sounds representing what he heard, and so on. Memories representing the other three senses will work the same way. However, this kind of sensory data in his memory is not as important as the kind of energy the sensory data represents. So here the author says that the boy is he can store it as mental image or mental sound. So for example, he saw the dog biting him. He saw the dog barking and biting him. So he's telling that this kind of sensory data is not important as the but what is important, whether it is stored as a visual image or it is stored as auditory memory, it doesn't matter. But what you are what your perception, again coming back to the chapter name of the chapter, that is perception, how you perceive that information. So we basically have two kinds of mental energy: positively charged energy, which we call love, confidence, happiness, joy, satisfaction, excitement, enthusiasm, to name a few of the pleasant ways we can feel, and negatively charged energy representing fear, terror, dissatisfaction, betrayal, regret, anger, confusion, anxiety, stress, and frustration, all representing what is commonly referred to as emotional pain. Because the boy's first experience with the dog was intensely painful, we can assume that regardless of what senses were affected, all of his memories of this experience will be painful, unpleasant feeling, negative energy. Now, what effect will this negatively charged mental energy have on his perception and behavior if and when he encounters another dog? The answer is so obvious that it may seem ridiculous even to ask, but the underlying implications are not obvious, so bear with me. Clearly, the moment he comes into contact with another dog, he will experience fear. Notice that I use the word another to describe the next dog he has any contact with. What I want to point out is that any dog can cause the boy to feel fear, not just the one that actually attacked him. It won't make a bit of difference if the next dog he comes into contact with is the friendliest dog in the world, one whose nature is only to express playfulness and love. The child will still be afraid, and furthermore, his fear could quickly turn into unrestrained terror, especially if the second dog attempts to approach him. Okay. Each of us has at one time or another witnessed a situation in which someone was experiencing fear when from our perspective there was not the least bit of danger or threat. Although we may not have said it, we probably thought to ourselves that this person was being irrational. If we tried to point out why there was no need to be afraid, we probably found out that our words had little, if any, impact. We could easily think the same thing about the boy in our example, that he's just being irrational because it is clear from our perspective that other possibilities exist than the one in his mind has focused on. But is his fear any less rational than, let us say, your fear about putting on the next trade when your last trade was a loser? Using the same logic, a top trader would say that your fear is irrational because this now moment opportunity has absolutely nothing to do with your last trade. Each trade is simply an edge with a probable outcome and statistically independent of every other trade. If you believe otherwise, then I can see why you are afraid. But I can assure you that your fears are completely unfounded. Okay. So how the author connects the story of the dog biting the boy and how the boy starts behaving next time when he sees any other dog with our trading psychology. So just because this particular trade was a loser, we immediately don't want to put the next trade because we are scared. And a top trader will come and tell that we are being irrational. But that is how it is. So he's telling that each trade has a uh, is a probability, and it is independent of each other trade. Just because you made the previous trade you lost it doesn't mean that you will lose this trade, or it doesn't mean that you will win this trade either. So, but if we lose the trade and if we don't take a trade, and there's a probability of winning also, we might, and we are not going that next trade because we lost the previous trade. So that is what the professional traders will look at. How big is this chapter? I think we will end this today. It's almost it's 8 o'clock. So we still have the perception and risk and the power of association, and with this particular thing, we shall continue this tomorrow. Okay. So I hope today's session was useful. I hope today's session was had some impact, and I thank you all for participating. Really helps a lot, motivates me. If you guys have anything to tell, please feel free to. And if not, we will end this session, and I'll upload the same on YouTube and share it on the group. Okay, fine. Thanks a lot. Thank you, guys. Much appreciated. Thank you, Srijit. We'll continue this tomorrow. Okay. Thank you. Bye.